Легко вам сказати, повертаймося. Я це якось намагаюся зібрати себе докупи після
Good afternoon. So it's very easy to say get back, and but I'm just it's not that easy. I'm grateful that I'm in this company of such speakers, such great speakers. I'm impressed with all speakers and all presentations, and I think that all those presentations make a whole puzzle, and this puzzle will be even more comprehensive at the end of the third day of our conference. And all the examples you are mentioning really fit into my topic, because I'm going to talk not that much about the veterinaries without borders in Ukraine. So as Natalia has mentioned, we really have something to be proud of and to share. But I will speak more about the concept we apply in different countries, including in Ukraine. Let me show some slides, but then I will get back into this visual format, and it would really be a pleasure for me to see your faces in case this is possible. I know that for 2.5 years we have had the pandemic, then the war, and I really need this physical format of speaking, and I don't like speaking to black cells. So if there is a chance to see each other at the end of the day, I will really be grateful to you. So let me share my screen to show you some stories. Stories that will illustrate my materials. So, in these pictures, to be more specifically in the first picture, you can see fungus, the mushroom, a fungus which got in 2007 to the US and America. It was safe for people, for animals, dogs and animals in the zoos, but it appeared to be fatal for bats. Bats started dying in hundreds, even in millions later. It's a sad story of bats, but it's a rather distant one, because this is year 2007, bats, America, so what do we have to do with this? But in the second part of the slide, this story becomes closer to us if we recall that bats eat mosquitoes thousands per night, which means that bats disappear, millions of bats disappear, and there appear millions of mosquitoes. Well, mosquitoes, it's not that critical, right? But at the same time, mosquitoes, maybe in Ukraine it's not such a problem, but mosquitoes are often carrying some contagious diseases. And also, pesticides are used to kill mosquitoes, and these pesticides really are left in our lungs, and they cause a lot of diseases, human diseases. Also, bats and mosquitoes have another effect represented in the last picture, because bats also make flowers blossom and give fruit. And there is one fruit when plant which then cannot be used for producing tequila. Well, people think that you can deal without tequila and without cocktails, but instead of the pictures which I've got, we could actually place other things. Instead of bats, we could have other types of animal species. Instead of agave, from which tequila is made, we could have potato, and disappearance of potato may have a drastic effect on our health and on our lifestyle, on our diet, and on the way we generally survive in this world as people. Also, in these pictures, you don't see any people. Or you just may imagine a person having a cocktail glass in his hand with tequila. But this first fungus, which was brought to America, was brought most probably on the clothes, on the shoes of a tourist who came from Europe. So the role of humans is also quite visible here. There is another story, the story of tortoises. I came to know that the gender, the sex of marine turtles or tortoises is determined by the temperature in which they are developing. In case they are developing in the cold temperature, I mean they are maturing, these are males. In the hotter temperature, these are females. With global warming, of course, we're going to get more female turtles than male turtles. But the scholars are very eager to experiment, so they placed into the cold water, which, according to all the forecasts, should provoke development and maturing of male turtles. They added a lot of plastic. They did not invent anything that was not any special plastic, but just the plastic that anyway we do have in rivers and in the seas. And they just increased the concentration of plastic in this environment to see what happens. So what happened? About 1/3, about 31% of the eggs that were supposed to become males were feminized. Well, again, turtles, bats, this is such a distant story. But from my personal experience, I can tell you that, well, before the beginning of the war, of the invasion, one of my relatives died from cancer, and a lot of my acquaintances have different reproductive problems. And when we start analyzing this, we could understand that all these shifts in the nature, all these shifts worldwide, are becoming much, much closer. I know all these stories due to the thing that I work in the international organization Veterinaries Without Health. I work in Canada, but we do have a lot of other branches throughout the world, and the Canadian organization works with more than 10 countries. This is Ghana, South Sudan, Vietnam, Laos, in Canada, of course. And since March 2022, it has been working in Ukraine, and I'm the Ukrainian program manager. And today we will speak more about Ukraine and the reality we are facing here. But at the same time, I would like to give you this insight of the global prospect to show that many stories which I can hear from my partners, from my colleagues from different countries, and a lot of stories I've heard from today's speakers at this conference. So a lot of those stories mentioned during the Animals in War conference are not just about animals. They are quite often about people, about the link between animals and people, and about the environment where these animals and these people live. This link of joint life of animals and people and the environment, these three spheres, is researched using the principle I'm going to talk about. This is the One Health principle. And by One Health, we don't mean that it's just the first or the second, but it means that one is united. It is a multi-aspect notion. Quite often, to demonstrate how this principle works, we use pictures like this one, where we can see a human, an animal, and some plants, or this diagram where you can also see this One Health approach, and the idea behind it is the same, that we have human health, we have animal health, and we have healthy environment where we live. I like this picture more because here we can see a diversity of people, of animals, and even bats appear in that picture, because there are a lot of animal species, and there is a lot of diversity which we shouldn't forget about. Since when we speak about One Health, we mean here the animals staying with us, and the animals which represent wild nature, and also the ones which seem not to interact with us like bats, but in an indirect, implicit way, they have some effect on our lives. This image is often called a triad, the One Health triad.
Стрілочки, які показують.
We have some arrows showing that everything is interconnected.
Взагалі, вивчення єдиного здоров'я і
The study of One Health and this concept started with the studies of diseases. The diseases that can be communicated from animals to humans, the so-called zoonotic diseases.
Ви ж можете писати в чаті, так, чати
By the way, you can write in chat if you have any questions, but please, if you have any idea, write about this. What is the percentage of diseases in the world that belong to zoonotic, so the ones passed from animals to humans? Just write a figure, suggest a figure in the chat, whatever comes to your mind.
Скільки це у відсотках? Скільки
What is the percentage out of all the diseases? Okay, you suggest 20, 70%. What are the other options?
Важко виступати в кінці дня.
Difficult to be the last speaker for the day, you know. Okay, 1%, 10%. Okay, so we have a wide range here, right? From 1 to 70%. Impressive, right?
61.
It's actually 61. 61% of diseases are animal to human diseases. It looks quite a lot. There is another figure, even larger, the diseases of animal origin, which doesn't mean that they are communicated from animals to humans, but they first appear in animals. And this figure is even more impressive. This is 75%. And it is with the study of these diseases that the study of the One Health approach started. Because it used to be the case that human health and animal health were separate things. People go separately, animals go separately. But with the development of companion animals, we started thinking that, okay, we do have rabies, probably we need to have our dogs vaccinated, but this factor is much larger. And when we speak about zoonotic diseases and diseases that first occur in animals, we can actually recall quite a lot of examples. Even COVID, which is still not over. Swine flu and a lot of other epidemics that we do remember. So they even contain in their names some animal words like bird flu or swine flu. A lot of diseases have already been overcome. We know how to treat them or even to prevent and control them. Sometimes they still go out of our control, like rabies. That is a disease that is absolutely preventable. We can work with it if we have the vaccination going on. But anyway, we can hear that in Ukraine, once a year, we do have some case of rabies when a person, a human, got it. Unfortunately, there are much more cases among domestic animals. Why does it happen so? The point is that we are living in the times when people live the closest to the animals than ever before. We are getting closer to animals to get their milk, meat. We want to have them in our houses as pets. And the most widespread idea is about dogs and people, but also a lot of people have some exotic pets, like you may have iguana, and you can actually continue with this list. This could also be a raccoon, for example. And, you know, traveling and trading have never been that simple. During the COVID and the war, it's not exactly the case. This is not the most illustrated example. But recently, that's really true, because even 50 years ago, 100 years ago, these movements of people and goods and diseases as well were not that easy. Now it's not that complicated as it used to be.
Також ніколи раніше ми так сильно не відчували наслідків.
Also, we never felt the consequences of crisis with global warming, with climate change that much. And it has never been the case that human effect on nature and on animals has been so strong, both direct and implicit effect. Why is it important to talk about this in Ukraine now? Because the war, on the one hand, puts a lot of secondary things to the secondary plane, because we have to focus on simple things of life, death, and protection of the country. But at the same time, war aggravates these problems. And during the wartime, all the things which I mentioned at the beginning about the diseases and connection between animals and people is still there, but it takes more complicated form because of the more complicated circumstances. So let me stop my sharing my screen for me to see you better and to speak to you in this format. And let me tell you how this One Health approach could generally be implemented during the implementation of projects. The Ukrainian program of Veterinaries Without Borders is the most recent one, because most of the programs in most countries and in Canada in particular, they are about 17 years old. In Canada, this is also considered to be a young organization, not very much experienced, because there are some organizations that have been dealing with the same issues for 35, 30 years, and they are well-known organizations. But anyway, 17 years of experience in different countries, that is quite a lot. And this experience has led veterinaries to the situation when they work with animals, which is absolutely logical because of the name of the organization. You need to work not just with animals, you need to work with the environment. What does it look like in practice? Veterinarians Without Borders are well known because they send volunteers, veterinary doctors, volunteers to different countries for them to share experience and best practices and just to help locally where this assistance is necessary. For some period of time, these were only veterinarians, but then it became clear in the communities where these veterinaries work that communities sometimes need some more assistance, and they need not just veterinaries, but they also need talks, discussions, explanations, like, for example, why it is important to do spaying and how they should treat animals. So it became clear that the volunteers perform the role of not just doing the medical part of work with animals, but they also perform the function of having some talks about health. And this is not just about only the health of animals, but a wider idea of health. That's why about 5-7 years ago, the concept of sending volunteers changed a little bit. And now, if we have a look at the opportunities available on the website of the organization and the volunteers who have got to other countries recently, these people are quite often no longer veterinaries. And we often send, under the auspices of our organization, some public health experts who could also be working with people, and probably their experience is working with people in hospitals, or even maybe they worked as researchers in the field of climate change or in the field of economy, contemplating how we could make the economic situation in the community better. So another option our organization also works with is sending not just one person, but a group of people, including both a veterinary and a human doctor and some climate change expert. While thinking about this model in Ukraine, well, unfortunately, following Canadian legislation, we cannot send volunteers to Ukraine now, but we work with Greg, whose presentation will be delivered at this conference, and we are sending volunteers to Romania where they have a shelter for animals, and there are a lot of animals from Ukraine. And thinking about this model, this approach, we actually face a lot of opposition. So I'm happy that I can talk to you about this, because at this conference we do have people who really care for animals and their life and health. But most people I'm talking to in Ukraine who do not belong to this field find it difficult to understand the whole idea behind it, why it is so much important to take care of animals, and why it is so important to take care of animals through the prism of this link of taking care of people. Why are these things so much interrelated and relevant? And please, I would also ask you to help me with one micro task. When we speak about One Health, remember I showed you different logos. That could be 3 different circles overlapping, or 3 circles connected with each other, or these 3 components, people, humans, and environment, could be described as a triangle. You can write a triangle for yourself, draw a triangle for yourself, or just imagine that you have a triangle with a top, and try to distribute people, animals, and environment to different corners of this triangle. Just in your mind, try to make this distribution. So we have people, animals, and the environment, and each component gets into a certain corner of the triangle. Have you done this? So write in chat, what have you got on the top here? Who? People, animals, or environment?
У когось, напевно, там будуть люди, у когось тварини, у когось...
Maybe somebody will have people, somebody will have animals, somebody will have the environment there.
Цікаво, середовище.
So it's interesting. The winning answer here is the environment.
Ну, бачите, якісь...
Most of you have taken this. So I would say that you're unique people, because normally I can hear absolutely different answers, and normally there at the top of this triangle we get people. And here is an example. Quite recently we announced a competition of grants, and I was placing an announcement on some public space sites where normally such organizations place their announcements. So I placed an announcement, and there was a need to take a category for which your announcement fits. And there are a lot of categories there, but animals is not present there as a category. So I was rather frustrated to see this. But then when we started talking to our partners, to our stakeholders looking for new partners, I just realized that people really see it that way, that the people are at the top and animals and the environment are there at the bottom. And because of that, most of my talks about One Health are based on the fact that people need to take care of the environment and of the animals to be happy. I don't like this approach, but I use it because then I can at least convey the message about the importance of One Health to the people who need to know about this, who need to hear about this, and with whom we need to discuss this. That's why, again, I will have the request to you, as to people working with the topic of animals and with animals in general, try to convey the idea that animals are important. Animals are not just they're at the bottom of this triangle. We need to take care of them because they can bring a communicable disease to us. This is one thing, or it's just not pleasant when they die. And it would be good if we could have this talk as a peer-to-peer talk. for all of us to understand that people and animals are sharing this planet and coexisting on it as equals. Today we have heard quite a lot about how important animals are, how important this link between animals and people is. And I think that animals really deserve this. They deserve this support of ours, not just in terms of physical support, but in terms of having some discussion dedicated to them, and we need to speak about them with respect and love. And that's what I hope very much for. And I think that this is really important. Yeah, I see that I just have 1 minute left, so I will not use it, but let me just express my gratitude to you for finding some time to join this conference. Let me express my gratitude to the organizers for hosting this conference, and let me wish all of you to have a safe day today. Thank you.
Дякуємо, Олександро. Це було
Thank you, Oleksandra.
пізнавально.
This has been really informative.
З питань можу задати з чату.
And as far as questions are concerned, let me just mention what is written in the chat. So, question is, what is the percentage of diseases that are transmitted from humans to animals? But you don't know the answer to this question, okay? And if there are any further questions to Oleksandra, we may actually read them out. I'm really happy to see here very many familiar faces, or if not faces, then at least surnames, because we work with a lot of interesting organizations. And here is the question: what is the most interesting project in Ukraine? Well, now we are supporting food provision for animals, and we are partnering with the UPO, but we also cooperate with them in terms of people, support of people. We have a paying project with another partner. I don't know whether it's interesting, but we just have to deal with it. And GladVet is our partner in the project of online consultations that you may get via your phone, via chat or video conference call, via the MedConsult website. I know that similar projects are also available in other places. So for me, this project looks the most interesting, since in parallel with online consultations, we have also launched some awareness raising educational events, both for animal owners and for veterinaries. And we've got quite a positive feedback to this training for vets. So we will continue moving ahead with this direction, and we intend to have a large webinar for veterinaries related to the topic of burnout and support of their mental health. And it will be specifically for veterinaries. This is a popular topic in Canada, so I think that there are a lot of advantages in bringing this program to Ukraine. And I think that the most interesting projects are the future projects, because we hope very much, as we have spoken to UPO, we will go over from crisis management to the development stage, and we will continue implementation of projects in Ukraine, but the focus will be more on awareness raising, on education, on talks about therapy, therapy, and this link between humans and animals. Thank you for the question.